All right, welcome back everyone. We'll proceed now with the department in the trade program. But before we start, I just want to make clear that we as a committee have now agreed to release the Export Finance Australia. So thank you for making time all the way up here, but your services won't be needed.
Anyone else?
Not
Sure.
well. Minister's not here, then we're all going home. Happy days. I'd like to now welcome Senator the Honourable Murray Watt, who's representing my good friend and the Minister for Trade and Tourism, Senator Farrell, who's obviously away doing very important business at the moment in Europe. And hello, Ravi, good to see you, acting as the Deputy Secretary of Trade and Investment Group of the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade.
I am.
And hello to all the officers who are here at the table and behind you. Now, Minister or Acting Secretary, Acting Deputy Secretary, have you got an opening statement that either
Not
you
from me.
would like to make, gentlemen?
I do not, Senator.
Excellent. That's the way we like to roll around here. Okay. Well, on that note, I did tell Senator Watt that it's like a very similar session to RAT, but just a bit more fun, I find. Now, Senator Henson, would you like to kick off proceedings?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good evening to you all. Look, I just wanted to ask about Mercosur, which has secured a 99,000 tonne beef quota at 7.5% duty, plus its Hilton quota going to 0% through their deal.
Got a couple of confused
with
faces.
I think Mercosur.
Sorry?
Mercosur trade deal. The South American trade deal.
Southern market zone, yes.
Yeah, I think we know what you're talking
Sorry, I
about.
have
Oh, you do it?
We know
Oh,
what
there's
you're
a
talking
couple
about.
of confused faces at the table. That's what I wasn't
Yeah,
sure.
the Mercosur trade deal.
That's right, that's right.
With the EU.
So I'm just seeking some information. Can Australia expect a similar figure in the Oz-EU FTA for our beef? And could we get an update, please?
Thank you, Senator. I'll ask Mr. Cruz to respond.
Thank you, Senator. Lachlan Cruz, Acting First Assistant Secretary, Office of Global Trade Negotiations. As was mentioned at the outset, Minister Farrell is in Brussels today, meeting his EU counterpart, Commissioner Šefčovič, and the Agriculture Commissioner, Commissioner Hansen, to progress Australia's interests in the FTA negotiations. Mercosur, of course, is a grouping of 4 South American countries, major beef producers, and you would be aware of the controversy that the Mercosur agreement has created in Europe. I'm not going to speculate on what the outcome on red meat market access will be in our EU FTA. We are a very different negotiating party to Mercosur. We have different interests, both offensively and defensively, and there's no expectation that the outcomes in Mercosur will necessarily look like the outcomes in our agreement with the EU.
Well, Mercosur has secured a 180,000 tonne sugar quota with 0 tariffs. Can Australia expect a similar figure in the EU FTA for our sugar?
So similarly, we're aware of the sugar sector's intense interest in outcomes in the EU FTA, but again, we're one country. Mercosur is a 4-country bloc with very specific interests, and I don't think it's necessary that the 2 agreements should look like each other. So with the Minister at a live negotiation in Brussels, I'm not going to speculate on what the market access outcomes might look like on particular agricultural commodities.
Well, our concern is that we need to ensure our producers here in this country get the best possible deal. So we've seen the benchmark, and so you're not able to give us any comfort that Australia can secure a similar deal?
So the Minister and officials in the department have had many discussions and meetings with individual exporters and with peak bodies in the various agricultural sectors. So we go to negotiations always seeking the best possible outcome for our exporters and producers. Of course, every negotiation is a balance of the interests of the two sides. We don't necessarily consider the agreement that one or another counterparty reached with the EU as representing success or failure. Each agreement is different and specific to the negotiating demands of the two sides and their interests.
Will the government ensure Australia secures a broad dairy quota coverage across multiple product categories like Mercosur was able to achieve?
Similarly, dairy is a sector of intense interest, and my boss, the chief negotiator, Cathy Raper, has met representatives of the dairy sector very recently. So we go into these negotiations fully across all aspects of their interests, their offensive interests. We know that they're concerned about competing with imports from Europe once the deal goes through. So all of those things are taken into account in the position that our negotiators take to the negotiations, but I'm not going to speculate on what the outcomes might be. Nothing is agreed until everything's agreed.
But beef producers, for instance, deserve the very best. So on what basis would the government accept materially lower beef access than that granted to Mercosur?
It's already answered that.
I have answered that question, I feel, Senator. So, again, Mercosur is a grouping of 4 countries with different interests to those of Australia. The agreement, of course, agriculture is an important facet of it, but it will also cover, assuming we can get to conclusion, it will also cover investment, movement of natural persons, a full range of services, commitments, mutual recognition. There are many other elements of the agreement that go together to make a whole.
I'm sure Senator Farrell will do a fine job representing Australia's interests.
He will.
Has the department reviewed Mercosur's negotiated volumes and used this to support a better deal for Australia in the negotiations?
We always look at the outcomes in the EU's agreements with third parties, so they're a factor that we take into consideration, but it doesn't. We don't necessarily take any particular agreement, whether it's Mercosur or Canada or New Zealand or India, as representing what we should get because we have a different set of interests in our negotiations with the EU.
So what modelling, if any, did the government undertake comparing Australia's potential volumes with Mercosur's access?
We have not modelled the outcomes of the Mercosur agreement as such. We know what they are. But modelling an FTA, the process of economic modelling of an FTA is a very difficult exercise.
So no modelling, no analysis?
Analysis, well, we know what the Mercosur outcomes are,
Yep.
but we haven't done a process of economic modelling.
Have you got a best case scenario? Have you prepared any best case scenarios for what might be able to be achieved with the EU?
Well, the Minister has said he doesn't do bad deals. We want the very best market access outcome on beef and sheep meat that we can get with the EU.
What would Australia accept? Sorry, I'll say that again. Why would Australia accept an outcome inferior to a bloc with comparable agricultural export profiles?
Senator, just to say, as Mr. Cruz has said, this is a live negotiation. The Minister is in Brussels at the moment,
Yes.
fighting for the very best deal we can get. At this point, comparing it to what, as Mr. Cruz said, what the EU has with others and so on is not, it's speculative.
So is that going to be the benchmark for Australia, the Mercosur deal?
No, Senator, I didn't say that. I said that it is a live negotiation, and we are, and the Minister is fighting for every single industry sector and the market access. And as Mr. Cruz said, there has been intense engagement with stakeholders, so we're out there to get the very best deal we can.
So there is no risk that the Minister, by design or otherwise, and I'm not suggesting it would be by design, but there's no risk that the Minister would sell out Australian farmers?
The Minister would never sell out Australian farmers.
Well, that's of great comfort. So if there was any prospect of farmers being dudded, is it the case that the minister simply wouldn't do the deal? Do you have sort of benchmarks set as to what's unacceptable? Have you prepared any recommendations for the minister in terms of the scope of the negotiations as to what's acceptable and what's not? And if so, could we have a copy of those materials on notice?
So negotiators go into every negotiation with a mandate, but I'm afraid I can't give you our bottom lines in the negotiations that are happening today.
And why not? Why couldn't you give me
Because they're
the
confidential between the parties until the agreement is concluded.
In my experience, when you're in a negotiation with someone, you don't tend to reveal your negotiating position. I mean, you might do that differently in the Liberal Party, but that's how we operate.
Minister Watt, I'd appreciate if you wouldn't reflect on other matters.
Well, it's an interesting approach to negotiation that you're putting forward.
And let me remind you of the rules of Senate estimates, that the fact that a confidential document exists doesn't exempt it from being produced unless there is a public interest. Now, there may well be...
Are you seriously suggesting we should table the negotiating position of the Australian government?
I am just asking the question. Absolutely, if you can make the case, Minister, that this should not be tabled and made public, I would welcome it, but I'm asking the questions. I wouldn't have thought that case needs
to be made. I would have thought it's pretty self-evident, but...
Well, Minister, there may well be, I mean, in all seriousness, there may well be certain thresholds where the government is quite happy to say, we will not allow farmers to be dudded at this level, for instance. So there may well be. So that's why I'm asking if you could take it on notice and consider the commercial and confidence matters, and to the extent that we could obtain those materials, bearing in mind that they may be exempt. But this is a matter of very high national interest, Minister.
Which is why it's a good idea to not reveal your bottom line.
Well, I will leave that for you to assess in terms of whether you consider and whether the Minister considers that this should be exempt. But obviously there is a great deal of interest in farmers getting the best possible deal. I will keep moving quickly through my questions. Can the department identify a single agricultural sector where Australia may secure a superior outcome to Mercosur?
Senator, I'm not going to speculate on what the market access outcomes for agriculture might be in the EU FTA.
Mercosur was able to secure some carve-outs for geographical indicators under a grandfathering prior user arrangement. You'd be familiar with that. Mm-hmm. Given Australia has been producing Prosecco and Feta for decades, is this being sought with the EU? We're not going to lose our Prosecco, are we? We're not going to lose our Feta?
So, Senator, we're very aware of the EU's strong interest in a range of outcomes on GIs. They know that this is a very difficult issue for us for the reasons you've just articulated. We are engaging with the EU on GIs. The EU, in all of its free trade agreements, has sought and in almost all cases has received an outcome on GIs from the other side. But again, we will only do that as part of an overall package that is in the national interest. Mm-hmm. We're very aware of the potential for flexibilities and carve-outs and grandfathering and phase-outs and things like that. So again, our negotiators are doing their very best to secure the most flexibility that we can in the negotiations.
And, you know, I just want to make it clear, when negotiations failed back in 2023, the Trade Minister said Australia needs meaningful agricultural access.
Correct.
So what is the government's definition of meaningful in tonnes and tariff terms, commodity by commodity? Could you take me through that?
Well, Senator, I think this gets us back to the question of the negotiating mandate.
So we're not able to understand what meaningful agricultural access means?
Well, no.
I mean, is there a red line where the minister's over there doing the deal? Is there a red line where he is prepared to say under no circumstances would we agree to A, B, C, D and E? Is there any way that you can give us any information which I think would give Australian farmers some comfort?
I think the Minister already answered that.
Well, Mr Cruz is answering.
Well, the Minister, on behalf of the Minister, has actually already said that, to be fair, Senator.
As you say, 2 years ago the deal failed because the EU did not meet our expectations in terms of agricultural market access. And again, we have expectations, and if they are not met in the negotiations, we will walk away rather than do a bad deal.
What's the time frame? Could you give me an update on that?
So the Minister is meeting with his EU counterparts today, and the next steps in the negotiations will depend on the outcomes of those meetings.
So no other information you can give us on the time frame?
Well, it does very much depend on how today in Brussels goes, what we do next with the EU.
Have you had any report back? I mean, obviously it's obvious. What time is it in Brussels now? It's pretty early.
The meetings are underway at present.
And can you help me with the time? Is it
it's about
8 o'clock or something in the
Just
morning?
get our phones out.
Is it 9 a.m.?
Apple. What, world clock?
So the meetings are underway?
the meetings are underway this morning, yes.
And so have you had any update?
9:20. There you go.
20 past 9
a.m.
Any update on how things are going so far?
Senator, I've just confirmed with the Minister that he doesn't think it's a good idea for us to tell the Europeans what our negotiating position is.
All right, I think we're ending those questions right
Well,
now.
I'm not. No, I've got more questions. No. Well,
Sorry to disappoint you, but, you know.
Well, Minister, I always try my best in the national interest.
Is that
fighting
you
hard,
trying your best to tell them?
Fighting hard on behalf of Australian farmers. So just going back to the meetings underway, it's 20 past 9, nearly 25 past 9 in Brussels. How have things gone so far? Has Minister Farrell been able to text you to let us know?
No, he has not.
I could text him directly, actually. I might do that.
Well, then we'll just put it into
Indeed,
tonight's session. That's it.
But Senator, as we've said, this is live. It is, I think, as Minister Farrell has said on a number of occasions, it takes as much time as it's going to take. You know, as he's been on the record, we're interested in a deal which is a good deal. I think that we've probably exhausted as far as we can go on what we can say to you at this stage. A, because we don't reveal negotiating bottom lines in a public forum, but B, because it's going on now.
So can I just put to you, and my concern is that we have conceded low quotas, geographical indicators for no real meaningful access, and I am concerned that we are potentially allowing the EU to impose its domestic policy preferences through this agreement. So can the department explain why Australia, as an exporting nation, would want to make any concessions? You've made it clear you don't want a bad deal, and we're in complete, there's a unity ticket on that. But why would you want to make any concessions that would set farmers backwards in any respect?
No one has said that they're going to do that.
Exactly.
Excellent. So is that what Minister Farrell has just texted you?
No, I don't need to. I don't need to ask Minister Farrell to be assured that he and everyone in the Australian government is committed to getting the best possible deal.
So farmers definitely won't be dudded?
In my opinion, that is correct.
No one said in Farrell's record.
So is there the risk that Australia will accept a higher regulatory burden for less market access?
Senator, I think it's pretty clear from the answers you've been receiving so far that, rightly, officials are not going to be providing in a public forum information about what we may or may not do in a negotiation that is literally recommencing in 10 minutes.
Oh, so there's a morning tea break?
I don't know, but I understand the meetings are about to resume or begin for the day, and I find it stunning that you continue to ask questions that would involve revealing our negotiating position.
Minister, I respect the commercial and confidence nature of these negotiations. What I've asked officials for is there any information that can be shared with this committee to give farmers around this country the assurance that there is a red line. So, in all seriousness, I respect that.
The officials have repeatedly said, and I'm repeating, that the Minister and this government will not accept a bad deal for farmers or for Australians generally. And we can't give you any more detail on that, given that negotiations are underway.
If
Any more questions? Otherwise, we'll have to move the
look,
call
I'm
around.
actually happy to share the call, Chair. So thank you very much.
Okay, Senator Cadell.
Just some follow-ups on the EU, if I can. I like the phrase, Mr Cruz, and I understand your position, not going to speculate. Haven't there been briefings with groups in Australia like MLA and ALP with actual numbers?
There have. So I can give you some numbers in terms of consultations. In between the launch of the negotiations in 2018 and October 2023, when the Osaka deal failed, we conducted more than 1,167 consultations with external stakeholders and received 1,104 submissions. So that's in the initial phase. Since we re-engaged in the middle of last year with the EU, we've conducted over 100 external stakeholder meetings, including with peak bodies, civil society, industry groups and individual companies. We're continuing to hear from stakeholders as recently as the end of last week what they want and what their interests are.
But not numbers of consultations I was talking about, but in terms of quotas and tariffs and things like that, you have given real numbers to these groups in the last couple of weeks, haven't you, where they sit?
I haven't been involved in those discussions, but I mean, the industry looks at the numbers that are out there, and I know there's been some public commentary about that.
Okay.
So the industry is aware of certain numbers being bandied around. They're not at the table in Brussels, though.
Right.
I'll ask your colleague.
But as a department, you have put real numbers and quotas and potential tariff drops in front of industry groups in the last 2 weeks, haven't you?
So, Senator, if I can answer that on a general basis, the consultations that Mr. Cruz referred to there do go into understanding industry expectations. So across each sector, there is always in an FTA negotiation of any. So I'm not talking EU FTA, because as you know, I'm not the CN for the EU FTA. But in any negotiation, there is I'd say like a framework or, ballpark figures that are received from industry as to what they would see as being acceptable or not. But
So,
as Mr. Cruz said, that's not to say that there's been a specific number necessarily that, a definitive number that's been said, as far as I understand it. But yes, of course, what constitutes a good deal in their mind is very much part of the input that we receive.
So, for instance, imagine going back 27 days ago when I might have been a Shadow Minister for Timber. They might have mentioned like the timber industry having issues with the 5% tariff on engineered timber and beams, and you go to Sydney Fish Market, which has a beautiful timber roof that was imported from Italy with the 5% tariff in touch. Should they be fearful of that dropping to zero, so more of the Australian timber engineered products don't go into buildings like that?
Senator Cadell, again, it's a very nice way of getting to a very similar point,
Done.
which is we're not going to speculate on outcomes.
Well, that's fine. I'm happy
Sorry,
to...
I was just going to say we are aware of that specific concern as well,
Right,
from
okay.
the industry. Yeah.
Well, I will give away a personal negotiating position for any of those listening. I'm more than happy for Minister Farrell to give more ground on the luxury car tax, as I always say in this. So is that up for chat at all?
The EU has expressed interest in changes to the luxury car tax. As with everything else, it will come down to what the final balanced outcome looks
Give
like.
them that win. Thank you very much. See you later. Thank you, Chair.
Senator.
You're welcome, Senator Cadell. Thanks for that. Maybe we'll see you back in a different capacity in 6 weeks' time.
No. 1st of March.
Okay, 1st of March. Okay.
Well, that's depends.
Good evening to Senator Cadell. Now, Senator Henderson, have you got any more trade-related questions?
Any other national secrets you'd like us to discuss?
I was in the middle of trying to text Minister Farrell, but I'll have to... Yes, I do. Thank you, Chair. At the last hearing, officials said the EU's approach to our FTA regarding the TSD chapter was closely similar to the New Zealand model. So has the EU changed its proposal to Australia since then?
No.
And can you just expand on your answer?
So the outcome in the TSD chapter will be the same as the New Zealand EU FTA.
Okay. So an EU Commission fact sheet states that the EU-NZ FTA makes TSD commitments legally binding and enforceable and contemplates temporary suspension of trade preferences as a last resort for serious violations of core commitments, regardless of impact on trade. So does DFAT accept that is an accurate description of the EU-NZ approach?
So the ability to temporarily suspend trade preferences under our FTA will be limited to violations of certain specific labour or climate change obligations made under the TSD chapter.
So the EU's sanctions as last resort approach implemented in the EU-NZ deal was not applied in the India-EU agreement, which instead leans on consultation on cooperation for environmental matters. Does DFAT accept that if the EU is willing to do consultation, not compliance with India, then Australia should, at minimum, be able to negotiate equivalent flexibility?
Well, again, that comes down to the final parameters of the deal, and I'm unable to comment on that specifically.
Right. So you can't provide any further information?
No.
Is that because there's some commercial and confidence aspect to that?
It's because the outcome is subject to the conclusion of the final package.
Okay. Is DFAT using the EU's India approach as a precedent to argue against NZ-style enforcement for Australia?
Well, my understanding of the TSD chapter is that it was substantially concluded before the India-EU deal was done. So the India deal will not necessarily have a material impact on the outcomes of TSD for Australia-EU.
The EU's Mercosur fact sheet says Paris becomes an essential element and that TSD disputes run through consultations and a panel of experts with recommendations made public. Does DFAT consider that model less intrusive than NZ-style trade preference suspension for TSD breaches?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator.
And why is that? Do you not know
because
the
I'm not
answer,
familiar with the details of the TSD chapter.
Okay. Will DFAT rule out agreeing to any EU-Australia FTA text that enables suspension of tariff preferences for alleged Paris-related non-compliance, even as last resort, and regardless of impact on trade?
I'll have to take that on notice too.
And can I ask why that is?
Because I'm not familiar with the details of the TSD chapter.
Does anyone else have those details?
Our negotiators are in Brussels.
I'm sorry,
Our negotiators are in Brussels at the moment. So the people who are most intimately involved in the
Okay, I
details.
understand.
And also, as Mr. Cruz said, the final parameters of the package are subject to negotiation.
We know the EU-Mercosur agreement does not have a sanctionable TSD chapter, and we have now seen that the EU-India agreement doesn't either. Has DFAT insisted that our deal be in line with these deals where there is a non-sanctionable TSD outcome?
So my understanding of the TSD outcome is that it is the same as the New Zealand-EU agreement. So it's not relevant to the Mercosur outcome or the India outcome.
Would the government accept enforceable sustainability sanctions when Mercosur and India did not do so?
I'll have to take that on notice, Senator. I don't know the details of the TSD chapter well enough to answer it.
Okay. And no one else here has that detail?
No, so the chief negotiator is in Brussels.
In Brussels, okay. Does this effectively allow the EU to impose its domestic policy preferences through trade enforcement? I guess that's a key issue.
I think the answer to that question is no, but again, I'll have to take it on notice and we will check.
All right. Thank you. Chair, I am just... no one else is seeking the call?
Nope.
All right, well, look, in terms of DFAT, I'm very happy to move on. in the program.
Thank you, mate. I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, can I say thank you very much? I know there's a number of you that obviously are not here, but can you also just pass on our thanks and best wishes? Hopefully there will be a good outcome for everyone involved, particularly for Australia and our farmers. I'm sure Senator Farrell and George and the team are doing an excellent job over there at the moment. And you know, Ravi, given your past experience with a number of other agreements, how important, but also these things just don't happen overnight either too. It takes time to get a good deal, which I'm sure knowing Senator Farrell will come good with the goods. So pass on our thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senators.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Now, on that note, we are now going to have the Australian Trade and Investment Commission come to the table. Thanks, Sarah. We'll just suspend. Can we just suspend briefly, please? All right, welcome back, everyone. I'd now like to welcome the Chief Executive Officer of the Australian Trade and Investment Commission. Good evening.
Good evening,
Good to see Paul. And to all your officers at the table and behind you. Did you have an opening statement?
No, Chair, I don't have an opening.
You happy to go straight to questions? You're happy to go straight to questions?
Straight to questions.
Excellent.
Yes, Chair, happy to go straight to questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
Senator Henderson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Mr Grimes, good evening to you and your team. I just wanted to ask about the export market development grants. So given tiers and appropriation levels are out of scope for, and this is about the independent review, for the independent review, what internal governance process exists to address tier design and funding adequacy outside the review?
So, Senator, the review will inform the next round of the EMDG program. So logically it makes sense for the government to receive that review and then in consultation and in conjunction with the receipt of that review, Austrade will then progress the work around the design of the next round of EMDG grants.
Has the independent reviewer reported to the Minister or the Department?
No, Senator. The independent reviewer is in the final stages of finalising his report, but it has not been finalised yet and it has not been provided to the Minister for Trade and Tourism. And
just in terms of what are the... So you haven't had any update at all or any progress report? So the Austrade supports the reviewer in his work, but he hasn't completed his independent report, and that will be completed, I would imagine, in coming weeks, but it will be some weeks before he completes the report and then submits it to the Minister for consideration, recognising that the next round we wouldn't be anticipating that would open until late towards the end of this year. Mr Grimes, there is some really genuine concern from industry that the review was quite a superficial exercise with limited scope and authority to address the program's fundamental issues, and can I just put to you and ask you to respond on industry feedback? So applicants are frustrated by the lack of funding. This tiered system is overly complex, and this first come, first served approach, which of course is contrary to the whole notion of competitive assessment, is also has caused enormous issues as well. Can I get you to respond to those concerns?
Well, I certainly see Mr Yeen's report as providing an excellent opportunity to air and consider a number of those concerns that have been raised by stakeholders. Senator, you quite properly...
Except those concerns, Mr Senator,
I was finishing my answer.
Yes, sure.
You appropriately drew attention to the fact that there are broader policy parameters as well. And in the lead up to the next round of the MDG, Austrade will ensure that we're consulting and listening to stakeholders, and indeed ensuring that we provide well-balanced and considered advice to the Minister for Trade and Tourism.
Except for the fact that so much of the concerns about this program falls outside the review. And so there is concern that this is just a box-ticking exercise.
The major concerns that I'm aware of are concerns, as you indicated, that relate to the essentially the first in best dressed model. And I'm very confident that Mr Yeen has and will have a very good opportunity to fully consider the matters that have been raised by stakeholders.
Is Austrade separately making a submission to the review?
No, we're not separately making submission to the review, but in the normal course of events, we would expect that once the review has been completed and submitted to the Minister may seek advice from us and would provide any further advice at that stage.
So you're not able to assess the draft recommendations or have some input at all?
As I indicated, Senator, we support the reviewer in the preparation of his review report, but at the end of the day, the final review report is a matter for the independent reviewer. And as you'd expect, I want to be, quite respectful that at the end of the day, the reviewer has the final say on the recommendations that he is making to the Minister for Trade and Tourism.
Have you consulted with the reviewer at all in relation to any aspect of his report?
In the conduct of his report, we regularly have conversations with the reviewer because Austrade provides the Secretariat support to support him in the development of his report.
And have you provided any feedback on any draft or any aspect of any draft?
Yes, we would provide feedback to the reviewer, but at the end of the day, as I was saying before, Senator, the review's recommendations are a matter for the reviewer.
No, I understand that. So what have you been doing? You've been looking at draft versions of certain parts of the report?
So the reviewer is currently finalising his report. As he does that, he's seeking support from Austrade. We're providing that support, but at all stages, any support that we provide will be subject to his consideration.
Okay, all right. And is there anything else that you wanted to report at all about the review?
I
guess to give industry confidence, Mr Grimes. So industry does feel confident that some of these core problems are being addressed.
Only the point that I made earlier, and that is that I certainly see the review as an excellent opportunity to reflect on the experience of round 4. Are there any lessons to be learnt and opportunities to improve the program?
Okay. Could we have on notice the documents that you have reviewed, please, as part of this review process?
We'll take that on notice.
Thank you very much. What would you like to see? I mean, I understand that it's independent, but what would you like to see come out of the review, and what improvements do you believe are warranted to ensure that industry has greater confidence in these grants?
I don't believe it's appropriate for me to be speculating on the recommendations of the review, but I'm very happy to say that I would expect that the reviewer will be listening to the views that are being put forward by stakeholders, we'll be taking those into consideration and providing some well-considered recommendations for the Minister's consideration.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I will leave my questions there. So thank you very much for your attendance this evening.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Senator. Look, I've just got maybe a couple of questions just wanted to ask around Accessing New Markets Initiative. And how is this Accessing New Markets Initiative supporting Australian businesses to find new opportunities?
Well, the Accessing New Markets Initiative is intended to be delivered in conjunction with peak industry bodies. Austrade's working very, very closely with those bodies at the moment on the rolling out of the Accessing New Markets Initiative. Senator, we have a tendency to always give programs an acronym, so we refer to it as the AMNI program. So if you hear officers referring it to as AMNI, it is the Accessing New Markets Initiative. 40 peak bodies have been selected to be participants, I should say, in a trade diversification network. We're working in close conjunction with those peak bodies to develop trade diversification plans with specifically focused activities to support the diversification of Australian exports. At the same time, we're ensuring that there's an increase in our capacity in our international network to support the initiatives being delivered through AMNI. We've established a task force within Austrade. That task force is called the Trade Diversification Task Force. Our General Manager, who is the leader of the task force, Mr Jay Meek, is with us this evening. Indeed, he's with us here at the table.
Well, hello. In terms of the Trade Diversification Network, what sectors will benefit from the activities of this network?
I think I might hand to Mr Meek to give you a sense of the broad-ranging sectors that are represented in the Trade Diversification Network.
Thanks, Senator. Jay Meek, General Manager, Trade Diversification Task Force. So in the formation of the Trade Diversification Network, we went through a competitive process to select peak bodies, and it would be fair to say there is representation from agri-food, consumer, technology, health, green economy, defence, and First Nations, and more broadly multi-sectoral peak bodies. That, as Dr Grimes mentioned, that we're actually in the process of building plans for that diversification. So it's quite broad in terms of covering the Australian economy, where the support will form around this diversification work.
And I guess in addition to the AMNI, did I say it right?
AMNI.
Yeah. We used acronyms with defence yesterday. What has the government done more broadly to diversify our trading relations and deliver for our exporters?
So through this program that we have basically been, whilst we've been working with peaks to build their plans, that we've been focused on enhancing some activities around the world. And a good example of that recently is Gulf Foods in the Middle East, that we scaled that up. There are over 100 Australian companies that were present into that market, a very strong growing market for Australian agri-food exports in particular, and others. And we've utilised that funding for that type of work, and obviously allowed us to use the free trade agreement that has also come into play.
Yeah, because was it the end of January, the Gulf Foods? Was that something where Senator Farrell went?
Correct,
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Senator Daniel Boyer, Deputy CEO Trade and Investment. If you don't mind, I'd add, because you asked more broadly about what the government was doing, I'd also add the Southeast Asia Business Exchange, which has seen us really drive exporters into the new and quite exciting markets in Southeast Asia. I would also add the South Asia Business Exchange and the work that we've done in particular in India, but also into other parts of that region like Bangladesh as well. All of those have really seen us diversify our base of exporters into markets that traditionally have not been dominant in our trade figures. So, and as Mr Meek mentioned, with the UAE CEPA coming into force, events like Gulf Food are really important as well to help sort of drive us into that part of the world too.
I was just about to ask you about the Middle East and obviously the UAE. There's so many great opportunities, I think, that will come out of that agreement, but also more broadly in that part of the world and the footprint that I think the UAE provides Australia's exporters and businesses.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Mr Meek can give you some of the numbers associated with Gulf Food, but it was certainly the largest contingent of Australian exporters that we've taken to that event, certainly in my history in the organisation. Mr Meek might have longer memory than me, but it was a very successful stint already. Obviously, it usually takes us kind of 6 to 12 months to really test the commercial outcomes of a mission like that, because it takes time to do the one-on-one bilateral negotiations between companies. But even the early indications are really positive.
And Senator, if I could add, the work in the lead up to that agreement coming into force saw, I think it was in the 24-25 year, agri-food exports increased by 19.4% or 7.58 billion into the Middle East region. So what we are seeing is Australian businesses look very closely at that region that's growing and how they can actually pivot into that market and supply it.
And not just agri-food.
No, it's broader than that as well. So across the region, we've also got the MET sector supporting, which is for the mining sector that supports it. We've got a whole number of sectors, including tech and others.
Health, in
consumer health, that are looking at the opportunities that exist in the growing region.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks to the great work that you're doing to promote Australia, businesses and our wonderful products around the world. All right, well, I think on that note, have a good evening.
Thank you, Chair.
And we are now going to get ready with Tourism Australia.
Thanks, Minister.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Senator.
G'day, how you going?
I'm good, how are you?
Thank you. Hi, how you going?
All right, I'd now like to welcome Managing Director of Tourism Australia, Mr. Mack. Hello. And to all your officers at the table. Did you have an opening statement?
I do have an opening statement. I can table it or read it. It's up to yourself, Chair.
If you have a table, that'd be awesome, and we'll get straight to questions.
I can do that.
All right. And we'll get a copy, which has just come in here. Senator Henderson, you have the call.
Mr Mack, I've just received your opening statement. So this is a summary of your work since the last time you appeared. Can I ask you about your KPIs for 2025-26? If you could just go through those and just indicate which you are exceeding, which you are meeting, and if any, which are perhaps falling behind.
Yes, I can do that for you, Senator. And thank you, Robin Mack, Managing Director Tourism Australia. For us, when we look at KPIs overall, we look at visitation, expenditure as well. I'll just ask my colleague to see if I can get the latest that we have on our expenditure. But while that's coming up, one of the measures that we do look at in terms of KPIs is consideration that comes through in terms of our campaigns and awareness that we reach. So if I look at FY25, that reached 55.2% at 54. And we also look at expenditure as well, and we look at the bid fund program. While I'm just getting the stats, but from the bid fund program, we look at, which is actually, for context of the bid fund program, that's a subvention fund that we support our industry around the country when they're bidding at the critical competitive stage of winning international incentives and conferences coming to Australia. We have a subvention called the bid fund program, and we monitor the return on investment that gives us. So for every dollar that we invest in that gives us $52 return as a bid fund perspective. We also look at what the rating is for our events and satisfaction of our events. We hold over 50 events around the world for our industry to be able to connect in with us and do business for distribution around the world. And for that, we have a target of 91%. And forgive me, but I think it was in the 90s, 95%, I think, from memory, but I'll take that on notice to confirm it, but exceeding that. And then we look at expenditure overall for the visitors, as well as leisure expenditure as well.
So which KPIs, if any, are behind target this financial year?
So we're at the moment, in terms of where we're at for the targets, I'd say it's a bit early to say before the end of the year, because we've got a bit of a backlog on data. So we have targets as at the last data we have for expenditure is September. So we obviously look at financial year through to June. So we'll have a bit of a time lag. So it's hard to say at this stage, Senator, if we're behind on those targets. But we certainly have them in place as an organisation with our KPIs.
And but year to year, so September to September the previous year.
Yes.
How are you tracking?
September to the previous year.
In terms of the data you do have?
Yes. Yeah.
Is that one KPI where you're concerned that you may be falling behind?
At this stage, no. The one that we look at is the international expenditure and where we're at with that. But it's a little bit early, as I say, in this financial year to make a prediction of where we'll be heading. But
can you do year-on-year comparisons?
I can take that on notice to give you that. I don't have it in front of me here, but I can look at that, yes.
And are there any trends where you feel that you're on track, or is there any one of your KPIs where you think you're falling behind based on what you've seen so far?
Yeah, from the bid fund perspective, definitely not. I know that's tracking really well. Since we launched the program in 2018, we actually have had 205 wins out to 2029. It's delivering 1.38 billion to the visitor economy. In fact, that's an increase of 380 million that we've had in the last 12 months, so tracking very well on the bid fund. Our event scores and satisfaction are tracking well as well. Business events overall and the return of our business events numbers are probably, that's the one that's fallen behind a little bit in terms of the latest stats. The others are all we're seeing growth, but the business events ones of expenditure has fallen behind a little bit. So that's one we're monitoring closely. But again, that's data to September. So we're looking at that. But it's still, the business event sector brings in, I think it's 3.96 billion in terms of economic value.
If you could provide year-on-year data.
Yes.
And so we can just have a look at
I certainly can.
how things are tracking.
Yes.
We would be most grateful. What about the current total Come and Say G'day campaign spend by financial year?
Yes.
And happy to take this on notice.
Thank you, Senator.
Is there any snapshot you can provide of that campaign?
I can, while my colleague's looking for that in terms of spend and where we're at, but what I can tell you is that performance-wise and how it's going. So we did the Chapter 2 launch in August of Come and Say G'day. We launched it a few years ago, and 130 million will be spent on that over 2 years in our 16 markets around the world. In terms of results, though, overall, that's already had 522 million video views and had an ROI, let me tell you, actually.
And is that mainly Robert Irwin?
Robert Irwin is definitely a key part of that, but that's across the whole videos that we have, the film assets that we have. He stars in several of them, but he's certainly giving us a welcome boost. We actually have a breakdown of that by market, and I can tell you that for the US, we are at, I think it was 107 million. Bear with me 1 second. Here we go. Of those 522 million views, 105 million of those have been in the US, so that is very much Robert Irwin. And also second to that, actually just a little bit above that, is China at 109 million views. So it breaks down across the markets as well. And if
what are just to go for the breakdown of markets, what are the top 5 markets where the campaign improved conversion and where it underperformed as well? Are you able to just...
Yeah, I don't have a breakdown by market on performance of the campaign. I can take it on notice and get it for you. But overall, we're extremely happy with the campaign. I'd actually be surprised, but I will take it on notice that we haven't exceeded the target set for each of our markets because it's performing so well. It's really resonating with the target audience. It's the consideration of people seeing the advert and then actually wanting to take the next step is super positive in terms of what we've got. In fact, The stats we had just after launch were 83% who saw the advert said they would consider travelling to Australia after seeing the campaign. 77% said they would plan a trip to Australia in the next 2 years after seeing the campaign. And nearly 9 in 10 of our high-yielding travellers want to find out more of Australia as seeing the advert. So what we'll be able to provide on notice is where we're at in terms of the delivery in each of those markets against the campaign. What we work on separately, though, is what we do with our partnerships to convert the activity. Now, we work with about 150 partners around the world every year, 24 airlines, key distribution partners. A lot of those campaigns are running currently, but what we can supply you, and I can actually share now in terms of the results of our campaigns from last financial year, in terms of what we delivered for the partnerships, which might give you an indication, is 20% increase in terms of the target that we were set in incremental growth for the passengers that were booked as a result of those campaigns.
And what about the markets in terms of comparison with pre-COVID performance? So can I just ask about how you're tracking?
Absolutely.
And what is Tourism Australia's specific recovery plan per market?
Yes.
Given where you're at as compared to pre-COVID?
Yes, absolutely. And it actually does vary by market. So I'm glad you said that, because it really, as I say, it's a different case for every market. But those, if we look back at 2019 in terms of the statistics and what they've achieved, beyond those numbers so far, we have India, we have South Korea, we have UK, we have Indonesia, France and Italy, Vietnam and New Zealand. So we target 16 markets. So that's 8 of our 16 markets have already surpassed 2019 figures in terms of visitation. One of the standouts for that is South Korea, which is actually 143% up, so 43% up of where they were in 2019, so going phenomenally well. And aviation's a critical part of that success. India is going well. The UK is a standout market most recently because, particularly because of the Lions. Rugby tour earlier in last year in July, but then the Ashes in the latter part of the year drove a phenomenal increase. In fact, numbers just came out today for arrivals, and for the UK market, we saw the biggest number we've ever had from the UK in one particular month, 138,000 arrivals, which was up 33% on the previous year. So that is going phenomenally well. And the other markets, a slower return in some of them. China is actually one of our fastest growing markets if we look at it year to year, but it's still down on where it was pre-COVID levels, about 30%. So it's a slower return on that. But the numbers that we are getting from a tourism perspective is very much a quality visitor that's coming through. We're getting a lot more FIT travellers, less of the larger groups that are coming through. And actually the business events sector from China, because you have to kind of break down each market by sector of travel, the business events sector is actually exceeding 2019 as well.
Could we just get an update in terms of each market and each sector?
Yes.
Pre-COVID to now, just so we can...
I can take
look
that
at
on
those
notice,
figures.
Senator. Yes.
And if you could just provide, and if there is any insights that you can provide in terms of where you're, where we're underperforming as a country, and what TA is doing about that. So do you, if you, like, are there any specific initiatives? Is there any particular markets where things are not going so well, and how TA is going to address that?
Yeah, I can talk about how we address each market. We can give this the data on notice, absolutely. In terms of how we address them, we obviously adapt our strategy in each market. We have a degree of our brand activity, come and say good day, to drive consideration of Australia and keep it top of mind. At any one time, the consumer in our target markets is thinking no more of 2 or 3 destinations of where they're looking for. It's incredibly competitive. So we're trying to keep Australia top of mind with the Come and Say G'day campaign, leading on that. Then we'll work with partners in every market around the world. But then we have a degree of activity to support it. Think of it like an ecosystem for each market. So we'll be training travel agents through our Aussie Specialist program on how best to sell it. We'll be bringing the key decision makers across to our events here, like Australia Tourism Exchange. So the levers that we pull to increase that recovery are very much in place for every market. We actually through our annual operating plan, obviously do a bespoke strategy for each market to meet the needs with the budget that we have.
Mr. Mack, I just wanted to also briefly raise concerns about your work and your marketing into regional communities and regional Australia. So what campaigns or partnerships specifically target regional products? There tends to be lots of iconic images in your material, but what are you doing to drive visitation into small regional markets and to support small regional operators?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. Regional dispersal is very important to us. Our job is to get people here and getting them moving around the country as much as possible. We target high-yielding travellers who will stay more, spend more, but also disperse more. That's who we're targeting to travel around. Every market is a little bit different. Some of them can come for shorter periods of time. Some can come for longer periods of time. But the advertisement you see us run with Come and Say G'day, which actually has a degree of regional destinations in as well as the more iconic city destinations, it's a very much mix covered in those adverts, is kind of almost the tip of the iceberg for the content that we have, because underneath that we have a breadth of activity that is part of like we call our media host program, where we bring journalists and media over here, influencers, content creators, to cover a lot of content that sits through social channels, through their publications, that's reaching our target audience. So that is where we can also not only mention and cover regional destinations within our hero advertisement, but we can cover so much beyond that in that layer down, which is where we're talking and bringing to life the depth and breadth of Australia as a destination. So that's an example of our marketing and creative. And in terms of our media hosting program, there is always an element where they'll be visiting a city destination, but we always try and get them out into the regions as well, so it increases the coverage of what they do. We also look at our Aussie Specialist Training Program. I mentioned that earlier. That's how we train travel agents how best to sell Australia. That trains them on the whole country. It's not just cities. We have training sessions that our team around the world do, which targets about 65,000 people are trained every year by this group of trainers that we have that are out there doing webinars and face-to-face training. That's all regional content as well as cities. It's about itinerary building and getting people beyond the communities, out of the cities into the communities.
Do you utilise product placement in television programs, films, documentaries and the like?
We don't do that from a screen tourism perspective, not our role. We're doing the advertisements for it. If there are film companies that approach us for content, obviously we have an amazing video and image gallery that is free to anyone who wants, it's got over 10,000 images in it that people can use, download for free, so we can help in that regard. We will be approached sometimes for bespoke suggestions if they're visiting somewhere, but we don't do product placements, no.
Okay. And have you extended the deal with Robert Irwin? We chatted about that last time.
We did, Senator.
I have got a crush on him.
We've got still a little bit.
I think everyone's got a crush on him.
We've still got a little bit of time left on the contract, and he's very much he's actually an official friend of Australia and working well with us. But he just continues to shine in everything he does, and that's all the benefit for us in our campaign and our activity. But yes,
I might be outnumbered.
It's working well.
I suggestion we might call him before the estimates for next time.
Well, I have just texted Minister Farrell, but he hasn't responded. But we might have more luck with
Has he got your number?
Robert Irwin. Mr. Mack, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And thank you to your team for all your hard work. I appreciate your attendance. We will have more questions on notice, which we'll submit. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Chair.
All right. I do have a feeling that Mr. Irwin's very popular amongst some of the female senators. I'm not sure why, but anyway, maybe it was a very good impression.
I can explain more later.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's right.
That might be wise, Senator. Thank you. Just following on that campaign, it sort of went to some of the question that Senator Henderson asked, just around the metrics that you use. Are you able to provide a bit more information for the committee regarding how you measure the success of the campaign.
Yes, yeah. So we
Please.
look at overall how many people will access the video content to look at that. And as I mentioned earlier, it's 522 million views globally have done that. But we also look at social media impressions, which has been 92 million that we've had. And then we look what content has been created through word of mouth and also through our avatar visiting journalist programs. And to date, since we relaunched the campaign in August, we've had almost 8,500 articles around the campaign have come through. And that's a value, equivalent advertising value, if we were buying that space, worth $331 million. So performing well against our targets.
Yeah. And in terms of market research, you no doubt conduct market research into how effective these campaigns are. I mean, is there anything else you're able to elaborate or provide for the committee?
Yes, a couple of points I mentioned before, but when we test the advertisement around the world, and we actually invest a lot in research because we think we produced a good advertisement, we've got to test it really works with the diverse range of customers and markets we have. We're in 16 markets around the world. And we test that quite rigorously. And when we test it, we look at emotional response from the people looking at it and will they take a next step. And it actually performs in the top 1% of tourism adverts that they're seeing and testing. So we know it's really resonating. But I mentioned some of the stats earlier, but another one is 3 in 4 of our high-yielding travellers indicate there is something new in which they hadn't realised Australia was known for. And I think that's how we're getting that balance of the icons. We're known for kangaroos, so we use our animated Ruby Roo as a brand code for come and say g'day. But they also see the icons that they might be familiar with, but then they're getting a depth of product in there. So we're actually breaking new ground with the consumer and showing more of Australia than they first initially thought.
And in terms of these campaigns, is it something you're expecting to roll out every 1 or 2 years, like a new campaign?
We monitor the campaign for the success and make sure it's still resonating, and then we take action. We first launched this Come and Say Good Day campaign back in 2022, making sure we were responding.
You've taken a different approach this time round with this campaign, haven't you, to
we
previous
have,
campaigns?
yes. So we launched Come and Say Good Day in 2022. It was going really well, but we want to keep evolving it, make sure it gives us cut through. So that's when, in the Chapter 2 launch, which we started in August across our markets, we took a local advocacy approach. Hence, Robert Irwin was used in the US. We used Nigella Lawson in the UK, and Vera Yoshiu, a very famous Chinese actor for China, to really look at who are the friends of Australia but resonate with the target customers in each of those markets. So we know that they're seeing what we're sharing with them, but they're also hearing it from a voice of someone they trust, an advocate, and sharing their love of Australia and the fact that when they've been here, it's generated memories that last a lifetime. So that's the evolution we've had with the campaign. But we always monitor it. We always evolve and look at how we can make it better. There's also bespoke campaigns that you might not be aware of that come from that. So, for example, for the recent Ashes campaign, we ran a How's That campaign, How's That for a Holiday, with Pat Cummins starring in that, and that was ran in the UK market with 22 million video views for it. But the strategy for that is when people are watching these major events that we have here in Australia, when the eyes of the world are on it, or the eyes of the country are on it in that instance, they're being enticed with advertisements around it for coming to Australia for a holiday. So that's very effective as well. So they're watching it, but come over as well.
Oh, good on you. Do you tailor or have these ads run here locally?
We don't. It's not designed for the domestic market, so we don't do domestic tourism, just inbound international. So they're very created for the target customer overseas.
I'm sure like a lot of Aussies, you know, we probably don't even know half the country that we live in, right? It's such a great place and so wonderful, the ads that you produce. So well done.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
Look, on that note, I just want to say thank you to you and your team. I'm sure if Senator Farrell's here to say thank you, but Senator Watt's equally impressed by the work that you do. And again, thank you on behalf of the committee for the work you do.
Thank you.
All right, colleagues. Well, on that note, that concludes today's proceedings. It is requested that senators do submit written questions on notice by the 20th of February to allow sufficient time for answers, and the committee has set the 10th of April as the date for the return of answers to questions taken on notice. I want to thank Minister Wong, Minister Watt, Ms Adams, all the other officers of the department who appeared from the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, all the agencies and witnesses who gave evidence at today's hearing. Thank you to Hansard Broadcasting and, of course, our Secretariat. And on that note, declared that the hearing is now adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you.